Not an issue for me because I don't work for the Saudi Arabian government, but it probably is an issue for players that chose to go and take that money. And I think you have to ask yourself the question, Jim, why?
It's a very strong word. I think it's disappointing. I think the players that have decided to...
Yeah, oh, this one definitely got the entire golf world buzzing. From Rory McIlroy to Tiger Woods, plenty of big names have stayed firmly against the LIV Tour. But this time, it was Jack Nicklaus stepping out of the shadows and firing off his own take. He didn't hold back for a second. He straight up said the tour was buying the game.
See this build up with a lot of our guys here. And they didn't have that, and I can see that. They have an opportunity to do something for their families that they're probably not going to be able to do on a regular.
What they've done is they've turned their back on what has allowed them to get to this position.
And that hit different coming from a legend like him. It's been a minute since LIV burst onto the scene, and sure, things look calmer now, but that's mostly because everyone already aired out their opinions again and again. Folks got tired of repeating themselves. But Jack? He showed up late to the party and still dropped heat, resurfacing out of nowhere to take his own jab at the Saudi-backed tour. Jack is a straight legend. The man stacked up 18 majors, and he's still the only golfer standing above Tiger Woods on that list. So when someone with that kind of resume speaks up, people listen for real. And Jack wasn't feeling the crazy bags LIV was tossing around. Not because he thought the players didn't deserve their shine, but because it was way too obvious the league was trying to buy the entire sport. That's what had him shaking his head and calling it out loud. Jack didn't just speak, he pressed the pressure point of modern golf. He said the money got so out of control that the sport stopped feeling like competition and started looking like a straight-up auction. And coming from him, that hit like a slap across the room. He made it clear he wasn't blaming the players. He said anyone offered life-changing money would take it. His issue was with the people throwing billions around like they were buying bragging rights, not building the game, and the timing made it even louder. Just when the drama between tours seemed to cool down, Jack stepped back and like, nah, we're not done yet. That alone had players, fans, and execs looking sideways. Some insiders even whispered that Jack's comments reopened conversations everyone had tried to bury months ago. Suddenly, people were arguing again, and the tension felt like it never left. Old wounds were being ripped right back open. But the wild part? LIV didn't clap back at Jack, at least not publicly. They stayed quiet, acted unbothered, and kept pushing their narrative that everything was under control. But you could feel the discomfort in the air. They knew this wasn't just some random fan ranting online. When a legend talks, the entire sport stops and listens, and Jack dropping this heat made the golf world feel shaky all over again. Even players who switched to LIV started getting asked uncomfortable questions they thought were long gone, and fans exploded instantly. Some backed Jack, saying he was protecting the soul of golf. Others argued that the game needed change and LIV brought that spark. The debate turned into a full-on showdown across social media, group chats, and even locker rooms. Jack didn't just give an opinion, he kicked the beehive wide open. And now everyone's watching to see who answers next, because this conversation is clearly far from over. It's been more than a year since LIV popped up, and trust me, this isn't the first time people complained about golfers getting paid massive money. But unlike the loud crowd before him, Jack never blamed the players who switched, not even once. Calling them defectors was something that came from the hardcore PGA loyalists, the ones who treat the PGA like a religion. To them, joining LIV was a slap in the face to the entire sport. They labeled those players as rebels and talked wild about how they couldn't stand them or even handle the idea of teeing up next to them again. All this chaos cracked the sport in half, creating a rift people say might take years to fix. And when it finally settles, golf won't look the same. It'll be a whole new era, no question about it. That's exactly how the so-called golf war was born. Yeah, the loudest explosions have cooled off, but don't let that fool you. Things are nowhere near normal. Folks on both sides are still clashing every chance they get. LIV players are fed up with the extreme loyalty some golfers show to the PGA, acting like just because the PGA came first, it should automatically remain the face and future of the sport. Meanwhile, people tied to the PGA keep bringing up how LIV is backed by those accused of violating human rights, and that argument gets thrown around every single time. But honestly, both sides are out here trying to work, play golf, earn their money, and build solid lives. That's the real truth. The golfers who moved to LIV just chose the smoother path. And for some reason, the hardcore PGA crowd stays salty about it. They're not thrilled about those massive LIV paychecks either, because let's be real, those numbers are wild. Some LIV players earn more in 1 year than a PGA golfer might make in 10, maybe even longer. That's the part that really sets people off, but saying these players suddenly don't matter just because they chose a more comfortable life? That's extreme. These aren't reckless people, they've got families, responsibilities, and real futures to think about. Yeah, chasing huge money without hesitation isn't always the cleanest look, but calling every single one of them greedy is unfair. And Jack agrees. He has never once pointed fingers at the players who joined LIV. At 83 years old, he laid it out simply: they were given a choice. Play golf for a shorter stretch, secure life-changing money, and guarantee financial stability for their families, or stay with the PGA, take the traditional route, grind through the regular tour, move to the senior tour, and eventually retire after decades. He made it clear, both paths are valid, and no one should be punished for choosing what works best for their life. Sure, staying on the PGA path isn't as easy or flashy as what LIV players stepped into, but it's still a solid, respectable career. The players who jumped to LIV simply picked the smoother road, and that was their call to make. But Jack admitted something real: even if the move helps the players long term, it might not play out well for the sport itself. He wasn't a fan of how the PGA was pushed into reacting so fast. To him, LIV felt like a whole second tour stacked on top of the main one, almost like a new layer trying to blend into an old system. But at the end of the day, Jack kept it honest. Maybe he didn't fully go with the flow, but he said times change, and he knows he'll have to accept whatever the game becomes eventually. Everything now hangs on how these legal battles play out. A bunch of LIV golfers took their fight over ranking points straight to court, and whatever the judges decide could shape LIV's entire future. For now, they're still fighting just to earn a real seat at the table, trying to prove they belong in the same conversation as the traditional tours. Of course, that's rubbing people the wrong way, and honestly, who's surprised? The PGA has been the heartbeat of pro golf for decades, and nobody likes outsiders walking in and shaking up their entire foundation. Jack says LIV is moving too fast for its own good. In his eyes, they're throwing money around like they can buy the sport, buy respect, and buy loyalty. And he made it very clear, that's not how this world works. You can't buy something you're supposed to earn, and Jack backed that fully. He said he didn't believe the sport was ever meant to work that way. And then someone dropped an analogy that stung hard. People were saying the LIV camp just wants to stroll onto the veranda at Augusta National, sip mint juleps with the membership, and expect everyone to welcome them like nothing ever happened. In Jack's eyes, LIV is trying to slip into the core of golf without putting in the decades of groundwork the older tours had to build. Coming from him, that criticism hits heavy. This is a man who lived the grind. Jack stacked 118 titles in his career, and 73 of those came from the PGA Tour. That's real legacy earned step by step. That's exactly why he rides so hard for the PGA. It's the place that shaped everything he became. He even holds the record for the most majors won on that tour, and he never forgot where he came from, and trust me, he proved that loyalty in a massive way. LIV tried to lure him with a mind-blowing bag, more than £80 million across 2 separate offers, and he turned both down without blinking. He said he needed to play for the game itself, not for the cash, and coming from someone like him, that hits with serious weight. It was unusual, especially now that prize money in golf shoots higher every year. Jack explained that back in his prime, he didn't chase checks, he just played, worked, and won. He said, "I did what I did," meaning he stacked trophies, not paydays, even when the money seemed big for the time. He said it was nothing compared to today's insane numbers. Jack also pointed out how the game used to feel more pure. Players didn't walk around thinking about 6-digit appearance fees or massive signing bonuses. They just showed up, played hard, and hoped their skill carried them through. That mindset shaped his entire generation, and you can hear the pride in his voice when he talks about it. He believes that once money becomes the main engine, the sport starts losing the heart that made it special in the first place. That's why he stays vocal, even at his age, because he feels like someone has to protect the soul of the game before it gets swallowed by big checks and flashy promises. Yes, he respects the players who took the LIV deals, but he's still worried about the long-term effect. He thinks that if everything becomes about who throws the biggest stack, golf turns into a business deal instead of a sport. That's the line he refuses to cross, and he's not shy about saying it out loud. According to Jack, once money starts steering the ship, loyalty, tradition, and competition get pushed into the back seat. He doesn't want to see the game drift into something unrecognizable, even if he knows change is coming, whether people like it or not. But here's the twist: Jack also understands that the game has to evolve. He said you can't freeze time, and golf was always going to reach a moment where the old system gets challenged. He just wishes the evolution wasn't happening in such a chaotic, messy way. Right now, he thinks everyone is moving too fast, talking too loud, and chasing too much glamour instead of focusing on what made golf powerful in the first place. Still, he made it clear he'll keep watching, keep speaking, and keep defending the values he believes built the sport into what it is today. Then he broke it down even more. He said his entire lifetime earnings added up to around $8 million, and now you've got 10 players making that in a single season without even blinking. He never imagined golf would flip into something this extreme. Jack admitted there's plenty to criticize about the modern era, but he also made one thing crystal clear: he wouldn't trade his journey for anything. He loved every second of what he did, and you can feel that love every time he talks about the game. He said times have changed, and golf isn't the same world he grew up in. Back then, he and his fellow players competed for the sport itself, not for the paychecks. The money was a bonus, something you earned by grinding on the course, not something handed to you as an incentive to join a tour. If you love untold stories and the wild drama in golf, make sure you subscribe. Eagle Line Golf drops the real inside scoop every single week. Jack Nicklaus made it clear he's not a fan of what the game has turned into. In his eyes, a lot of today's players step onto the course chasing the money first, not the love of the sport. And honestly, you can understand why that hits him hard. When you look at a legend who poured his whole life into the game and then compare it to players switching sides for massive checks, of course it's not going to sit right with him. He comes from an era where loyalty meant something. So that's the heat Jack Nicklaus had to drop about LIV trying to buy the game, and he didn't hold back.